In the ancient world, when storms were seen as divine messages and stars as the eyes of the gods, tales passed down through generations shaped the way people understood their place in the universe. Among these stories, one name stood above all others: Zeus, king of the gods, lord of the sky, and wielder of thunder. Zeus ruled from the heights of Mount Olympus. But like all great rulers, his path to power was not given. It was earned through struggle, cunning, and destiny. Long before Zeus reigned, the world was governed by the Titans, ancient, powerful beings born from Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. One of these Titans, Cronus, had risen to dominance after overthrowing his own father. But power often brings fear, and Cronus lived under the shadow of a prophecy. One day, one of his own children would rise up and overthrow him, just as he had done. In a desperate attempt to defy fate, Cronus did something unthinkable. Each time his wife Rhea gave birth, he swallowed the newborn whole. One by one, their children vanished into his belly. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon devoured before they could even cry. But when the sixth child was born, Rhea could no longer bear the horror. She hid the infant away and handed Cronus a swaddled stone instead. He swallowed it without question, never realizing the true child had been spirited off to the island of Crete. There, in a cave hidden among wild mountains and sacred groves, the infant Zeus was raised in secret. He was nourished by the goat Amalthea and protected by divine nymphs. To shield his cries from his father's ears, warriors known as the Curetes clashed their weapons together in a rhythmic, echoing dance. Zeus grew in strength, intelligence, and resolve, knowing that one day he would confront the father who had condemned his siblings to a living death. When the time came, Zeus left Crete and set out to challenge Cronus. With the help of the Oceanid Medes, a wise and cunning goddess, Zeus concocted a potion that would force Cronus to release the children he had swallowed. One by one, they emerged fully grown and furious. Now united, the brothers and sisters waged war against the Titans in a cataclysmic conflict that would shake the foundations of the cosmos. This war, known as the Titanomachy, raged for 10 years. The Titans fought with raw power, but the Olympians had unexpected allies. The Cyclops' giant, one-eyed smiths forged divine weapons for the younger gods. To Zeus, they gifted the thunderbolt, a crackling spear of pure energy that could shatter mountains and set the skies ablaze. With this fearsome weapon, Zeus led the charge. Alongside his brothers Poseidon and Hades, and with the help of monstrous beings called the Hecatoncheires, creatures with 100 arms, he brought down the Titans and sealed them in the depths of Tartarus, a dark abyss far below the underworld. With the Titans defeated, the world needed order. The three brothers drew lots to divide the realms of existence. Zeus became ruler of the sky and the heavens. Poseidon claimed the seas, and Hades took dominion over the underworld. From the peak of Mount Olympus, Zeus governed not only the gods, but also the fates of mortals, presiding as judge, protector, and enforcer of divine law. Yet, Zeus was far more than a remote king. He was deeply involved in the lives of gods and men. He championed justice, punished oath breakers, and defended the sacred rules of hospitality. In a world without written contracts, people swore oaths in his name, and he was believed to witness every promise, every betrayal, every prayer whispered into the night. But Zeus was also complex and far from flawless. He was known for his passions. His love affairs with both mortals and immortals were legendary. His marriage to Hera, the goddess of marriage, and his sister was marked by love, but also by jealousy and vengeance. Zeus fathered many children, some divine, others mortal, but all extraordinary. Among them were Heracles, destined to become a hero of unimaginable strength, Perseus, the slayer of Medusa, and Helen of Troy, whose beauty would spark a war. His affairs often sparked conflict, but they also connected the divine world to the human one. Through his children, Zeus's influence extended beyond Olympus, shaping the lives and destinies of heroes who would forever change the ancient world. Zeus's presence was everywhere. He ruled the skies, and when lightning struck or thunder rolled across the mountains, the people believed it was Zeus himself speaking. His sacred animal, the eagle, was seen as a symbol of majesty and divine sight. The oak tree, strong and enduring, was his chosen tree. His image was carved in marble and gold across the Greek world. The most magnificent tribute stood at Olympia, a colossal statue of Zeus made of ivory and gold, seated upon a throne, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Worship of Zeus was central to Greek life. Great festivals were held in his honor, the most famous being the Olympic Games, where athletes competed not only for glory, but to pay tribute to the god who valued strength, discipline, and excellence. Sacrifices were made, prayers offered, and oaths sworn under his watchful gaze. The myths surrounding Zeus go far beyond his rise to power. Each tale reveals a different side of him. In one myth, fearing that a child by his first wife, Medes, would be mightier than he, Zeus swallowed her whole while she was pregnant. But Medes had already conceived, and one day, Zeus experienced a terrible headache. To relieve him, Hephaestus struck his head with an axe, and from it sprang Athena, fully grown and clad in armor, the goddess of wisdom and war. From this, the Greeks drew a symbolic truth. Wisdom is born from thought, from the mind of the king. In another story, Zeus was angered by the Titan Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. As punishment, Zeus chained him to a rock, where each day an eagle devoured his liver, which regenerated each night. It was a harsh reminder of the price of defying the gods, but also a story of endurance, defiance, and the human spirit. Zeus was also at the center of a great flood myth. Displeased with the wickedness of mankind, he decided to destroy humanity with a deluge. Only Deucalion and Pyrrha, a righteous couple, survived. After the waters receded, they repopulated the earth by casting stones behind their backs, which transformed into people. This tale, echoing myths from other ancient cultures, reflected the power of Zeus to destroy, but also to renew. Through all his myths, Zeus stands as both ruler and force of nature. His thunderbolt is not just a weapon, it is a symbol of order, of divine intervention, of the inescapable will of the gods. But he is also a reminder that even the most powerful must wield their strength with wisdom. To the ancient Greeks, Zeus was not merely a character in stories. He was the center of their understanding of the universe. He upheld justice, embodied authority, and protected the fragile balance between chaos and civilization. His actions shaped the destinies of gods and mortals alike, and his legacy lives on not only in ruins and literature, but in the very language and imagination of Western culture. And so, from the caves of Crete to the thundering peaks of Olympus, the story of Zeus is the story of how power can be won, challenged, misused, but ultimately guided by a sense of greater order. It's a story about destiny, rebellion, love, punishment, and redemption. A story that, thousands of years later, still crackles like lightning across the sky in the shadowed days of myth, when monsters roamed the earth and the gods still walked among mortals. There was born a child whose destiny would shake the very foundations of Olympus. His name was Heracles, though the Romans would later call him Hercules. He was not an ordinary child. Born of the union between Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmene, Heracles came into the world as a demigod, his blood a mixture of heaven and earth, of divine strength and human vulnerability. Zeus, as ever, was drawn to beauty, and Alcmene was a woman of unmatched grace and virtue. To seduce her, Zeus disguised himself as her husband, Amphitryon, and came to her bed while Amphitryon was away at war. From this deceitful act, Heracles was conceived. Hera, Zeus's wife and queen of the gods, seethed with rage. Her hatred for Zeus's illegitimate children was fierce, but for Heracles, it was absolute. From the moment of his birth, Hera vowed to make his life a torment. Even as an infant, Heracles displayed signs of his extraordinary nature. When Hera sent 2 serpents to kill him in his cradle, the child reached out and strangled them both with his bare hands. The act terrified his mortal parents, but it was a clear omen. This child was destined for greatness and suffering. As Heracles grew, so did his strength. He was trained in all manner of skills: swordsmanship, archery, music, and philosophy. But his power was unmatched, and his temper, at times, uncontrollable. Hera, ever scheming, waited patiently. When he became a young man and married Megara, the princess of Thebes, it seemed perhaps Heracles might finally know peace. But Hera would not allow it. In a fit of divine madness sent by the goddess, Heracles was driven insane. In his confusion, he slaughtered his wife and children. When he awoke from the madness and saw the blood on his hands, he was consumed by grief. Seeking purification and redemption, he consulted the oracle of Delphi. The oracle, guided by Apollo, told him he must serve King Eurystheus and perform 10 labors to atone for his sins. These tasks would come to define his legacy. The first labor was to slay the Nemean lion, a beast with a hide no weapon could pierce. Heracles tracked it through the rocky hills, cornered it in its cave, and after discovering his weapons were useless, wrestled the creature with his bare arms, choking it to death. He then skinned the lion using its own claws, and wore the pelt as armor, a symbol of his triumph. Next came the Lernaean Hydra, a serpent with 9 heads, and for each one cut off, 2 more would grow. Heracles enlisted the help of his nephew Iolaus. As Heracles cut the heads, Iolaus cauterized the necks with a torch. When the immortal head remained, Heracles crushed it beneath a great rock. Hera, watching, fumed. His third labor was to capture the golden hind of Artemis, a sacred deer faster than the wind. Heracles chased it for a full year before finally catching it while it drank from a stream. Fearing Artemis's wrath, he promised to return the creature unharmed. The 4th task was to capture the Erymanthian boar. Heracles drove the beast into deep snow and trapped it with a net. He carried it alive back to Eurystheus, who was so terrified that he hid in a large jar. Then came the Augean stables. King Augeas owned thousands of cattle, and their stables hadn't been cleaned in decades. Heracles, undeterred, diverted 2 rivers to wash the filth away in a single day. But because he had bargained payment beforehand, Eurystheus disqualified the labor. For his 6th challenge, Heracles was sent to drive away the Stymphalian birds, man-eating creatures with bronze beaks. Using a pair of rattling clappers given by Athena, he startled them into the sky and shot them down with his arrows. The 7th labor was to capture the Cretan bull, a beast of immense size and fury. Heracles wrestled it into submission and dragged it back across the sea. Next was the mares of Diome's carnivorous horses that fed on human flesh. Heracles subdued them by feeding Diome's to his own beasts, then bound the horses and brought them to Eurystheus. For the 9th task, he was ordered to retrieve the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. At first, Hippolyta agreed to give it peacefully, but Hera, disguised as an Amazon, spread rumors of betrayal. A battle broke out, and Heracles, believing treachery afoot, slew the queen and took the belt. The 10th labor was to steal the cattle of Geryon, a monstrous giant with 3 bodies. Heracles traveled to the edge of the world, slew Geryon and his guards, and drove the cattle back through great peril. But because he had received help during the Hydra and Augean tasks, Eurystheus added 2 more labors. The 11th was to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by a dragon and hidden in a secret garden. Heracles sought Atlas, who held the sky upon his shoulders, and convinced him to fetch the apples while Heracles took his place. When Atlas returned, he offered to deliver the apples himself, but Heracles tricked him into taking the sky back. The final labor was the most terrifying, to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades. Heracles entered the land of the dead, wrestled Cerberus into submission with no weapons, and brought him to the surface. Even Eurystheus was silenced by this feat. Having completed all 12 labors, Heracles was freed. Yet his life remained marked by trials. He fought in wars, completed heroic deeds, and eventually was betrayed by love. His second wife, Deianira, accidentally poisoned him with a tainted robe, thinking it a love charm. The pain was unbearable. Heracles built his own funeral pyre and climbed atop it. As the flames rose, Zeus lifted his son into the heavens, There, Heracles joined the gods as an immortal, his suffering finally ended, his heroism eternal. The story of Heracles is one of redemption, strength, and perseverance. It speaks to the human struggle against fate, guilt, and the burdens of one's past. Though half god, Heracles' path was never easy. And that, perhaps, is why he remains one of the most beloved heroes in all mythology, not because he was perfect, but because he fought to rise above his flaws and earn his place among the stars. And as Heracles ascended, another man wandered far from home, driven not by divine labor, but by the torment of gods and fate. His name was Odysseus, king of Ithaca, a cunning and resourceful hero whose journey home after the Trojan War became the very essence of epic. He had fought bravely in Troy, devised the idea of the wooden horse that led to the city's fall, and yet angered Poseidon, god of the sea, ensuring that his voyage would be one of storm and suffering. For 10 years he wandered, encountering the lotus eaters who offered forgetfulness, the Cyclops Polyphemus whom he blinded, the enchantress Circe who turned men into beasts, and the deadly sirens whose songs lured sailors to their doom. Each step brought him closer to home, and yet further from peace. Even in the underworld, he sought guidance from the dead. Odysseus, ever clever, resisted temptation and trickery, bound himself to the mast to hear the sirens, escaped monsters Scylla and Charybdis, and finally returned to Ithaca disguised, reclaiming his throne and family through cunning and courage. His was not a tale of brute strength like Heracles, but of endurance and intellect, of the hero who wept and suffered, yet never gave up. And beneath the earth, in a realm ruled by shadows and silence, another story unfolded. Persephone, daughter of Demeter and goddess of spring, once danced among flowers. But Hades, lord of the underworld, rose from the depths and carried her away to be his queen. Her abduction cast the world into grief. Demeter searched endlessly, and crops withered as sorrow reigned. Eventually, a deal was struck. Persephone would spend part of the year above, and part below. Thus came the seasons, spring and summer with her mother, autumn and winter with her dark husband. Persephone, once innocent, became queen of the dead, ruling with grace and dignity. Her story was not of conquest or journey, but of transformation, how one becomes both light and shadow, hope and resignation. Her tale teaches that even in loss, there is balance, and from sorrow, beauty can return. And so the myths intertwine: the strength of Heracles, the cunning of Odysseus, the endurance of Persephone. 3 lives touched by gods and destiny, each facing trials beyond mortal comprehension. Together, they form a tapestry of what it means to be heroic, not in perfection, but in the struggle to rise, to return, to endure. But as Persephone ruled the shadowed realm with calm resolve, and Odysseus sat once more on the throne of Ithaca, and Heracles took his place among the stars, a new figure emerged, one whose path would cross theirs not through direct battle or divine punishment, but through the labyrinthine corridors of fate itself. His name was Theseus, Prince of Athens, and his journey, like theirs, would carve his name into the stones of myth. Theseus was born of mystery. His mother, Aethra, was a mortal woman of wisdom and strength, and his father was either Aegeus, king of Athens, or the sea god Poseidon, perhaps both. From his earliest days, Theseus knew his destiny would not be one of quiet court life. Before his birth, Aegeus had hidden his sword and sandals beneath a great boulder, telling Aethra that when the boy was strong enough to lift it, he should come to Athens to claim his place. In time, Theseus did just that. He moved the boulder with ease, retrieving the items of his lineage, and set off for Athens, not by sea, the safe route, but by the dangerous road filled with bandits and monsters. On that journey, he slew Periphetes, the club-bearer Cines, who tore travelers apart with bent pine trees, Sciron, who fed victims to a monstrous turtle, and Procrustes, who mutilated guests to fit his iron bed. Each act purified the path, ridding Greece of chaos and cruelty, marking Theseus as more than a mere prince. When he reached Athens, he found the city troubled. Every 9 years, the people were forced to send 7 young men and 7 maidens to Crete, a tribute to King Minos, to be devoured by the Minotaur, a creature half man, half bull, imprisoned in a labyrinth so intricate that none could escape. Theseus, unwilling to let others suffer, volunteered to be one of the chosen. Upon arrival in Crete, he caught the eye of Ariadne, Minos' daughter, who gave him a ball of thread to trace his path. Into the darkness he went, the walls pressing inward, the silence thick with menace. In the heart of the maze, he met the Minotaur. There was no hesitation. Theseus fought with the fury of one who carries the hopes of an entire people. He drove his blade into the beast and retraced his steps by the thin thread, emerging not as a victim, but as a victor. He fled with Ariadne, but left her behind on the island of Naxos, whether through fate, forgetfulness, or divine interference. No one knows. Dionysus found her there and made her his immortal bride. Theseus sailed on, but in his grief or distraction, he forgot to change his ship's sails from black to white. His father, Aegeus, watching from a cliff, saw the dark sails and believed his son dead. Overcome with despair, he leapt into the sea, which from then on bore his name, the Aegean. Now king, Theseus sought to shape Athens into a just and noble city. He formed alliances, founded festivals, and sought wisdom. He even traveled to the underworld alongside his friend Pirithous to steal Persephone herself. But such arrogance could not go unpunished. Hades, knowing their intentions, tricked them into sitting on the chair of forgetfulness, binding them forever. Heracles, during his own descent to fetch Cerberus, found Theseus and freed him. Pirithous remained trapped, a lesson that even heroes may reach too far. Theseus returned to Athens changed. His later years were filled with loss and exile, and eventually death at the hands of a foreign king. But in the halls of legend, he remained builder, warrior, king. A man whose life was a bridge between mortal courage and divine meddling, whose choices shaped the world around him, for better or worse. Thus the tapestry grew richer. Heracles, strong beyond measure, who bore the weight of guilt and labors. Odysseus, cunning and loyal, whose wit kept him alive against fate's wrath. Persephone, poised and powerful, whose time in darkness gave birth to the turning of the earth. And Theseus, bold and righteous, whose every step carved a path for others to follow. 4 heroes, each flawed, each noble, each bound by the same truths. That strength is tested not in victory alone, but in how one faces sorrow, burden, and loss. That even the children of gods must bleed, weep, and choose. That in myth, as in life, greatness is not given. It is earned through struggle, sacrifice, and story. And so, as the stars burn high above, and the wind whispers through ancient ruins, their names remain, etched in marble, sung by poets, remembered not for perfection, but for what they dared to become. And so, from Olympus to the underworld, from distant seas to shadowed labyrinths, we have walked beside gods and heroes, mortals and monsters. These tales of Heracles, Odysseus, Persephone, and Theseus are more than just stories. They are echoes of a time when the world was new, when the divine and human shared the same breath, and when every challenge held a lesson. In their victories, we see courage. In their losses, we find wisdom. And in their journeys, we glimpse our own filled with trials, temptations, choices, and change. Thank you for joining us on this mythic voyage through ancient Greece. If these legends stirred something within you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more journeys into history and myth, and share it with fellow seekers of wonder. Until next time, may the gods watch over your path, and may your story be worthy of the stars.